Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Daily Memphian Tiger Podcast. I'm the basketball beat writer, Steven Johnson, joined by my guy, Frank Bonner, who covers the Tigers football team. Another big week in sports today. Tonight, in a couple of hours, the Tigers are playing in the Bounce House against Central Florida. Huge game for them. And also for the basketball team, they kind of opened the season with the first exhibition of the preseason against LeMoyne-Owen College. So there's a lot going on this weekend. But before we get into that, as always, don't forget to check out some of our other podcasts. Jennifer Biggs hosts Sound Bites. Eric Barnes hosts The Sidebar. And our guys, Chris Harrington and Drew Hill, record the Grizzlies podcast every single week. You can find all of these in the Tigers podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, and of course, dailymemphian.com. All right, Frank. My guy Frank's down in Orlando right now. Huge Friday night game, Friday Night Lights. Memphis is looking to get its first win ever at Central Florida, and they need it. They had a big win last week. Frank, what are you kind of looking forward to for the game tonight?
Well, obviously, Gabriel Dillon's not playing, so that that should work in Memphis's favor. But other than that, turnovers. I think Memphis is yet to have a clean game in a while, and so I think they need to come into the bounce house. The atmosphere is going to be crazy. And so I think they need to play mistake-free football and limit the turnovers. They did a good job last week not having a fumble, but Seth Hennigan did have that interception. And so I think if Memphis can play a clean game, that should give them a chance to be in it late in the game.
Last year they broke the streak. They had, I think it was a 6 or 7 game losing streak in the AAC play. They finally broke that in dramatic fashion last year, winning by 1 point, 50-49. Did the players or did Ryan talk about at all how the program hasn't won in Orlando this week?
They didn't talk about it too much. They don't in the same way that they didn't really harp on the Temple game in Philadelphia. They didn't necessarily harp too much on the past games against UCF, but they all did talk about how loud it's going to be. Mm-hmm. That's one thing they did talk about is they anticipate and they expect the stadium to be, a hostile crowd, especially the coaching staff and the players who played there before. So they did talk about the type of mindset they need to have coming into this game, and the communication that they need to have on the field is going to be very important for them. They talked about just because of the nature of the atmosphere. One of the players talked about that, it's going to be so much emotion that, you may be out of breath. And so I think they are prepared or trying to be prepared for that part of the game.
Mm-hmm. All right. So like you said earlier, Dillon Gabriel was out with an injury. I'm guessing he's probably out for the season. It seems like he had suffered a serious injury against Louisville a couple weeks ago. So the Knights are starting a young quarterback, but they do have a dominant rushing attack. I'm looking up here now. They got 5 guys over 100 yards. As a team, they're averaging close to 6 yards per carry. How is Memphis going to have to try to stop this UCF offense that's going to look different, but it's still kind of found ways to put up points even without Gabriel?
Yeah, like you said, the running game is going to be a key for both ends, offense and defense for Memphis. But one thing that I think is concerning for the Memphis defense is the fact that the UCF is 6 for 8 on 4th down conversions. And I think that is a testament to how strong their running game can be, on like a 4th and 1 or 4th and 2. I think UCF is in a position where they feel their running game is strong enough to take some gambles on 4th down, and they've been successful on those. And so if you're the defense who, all throughout this year, the problem is getting off the field. You don't want this UCF run game to put you in a position where you have to defend 4th downs as opposed to, having them punt. Because if you get into that, it can kind of snowball, and you could see the defense getting tired out in the 4th quarter. You don't want that against the offense that has had success running the ball.
Mm-hmm. And also, so, UCF, just like Memphis, they're starting a true freshman quarterback, Mikey Keene. I would say he's looked like a true freshman so far. 4 touchdowns, 4 picks. ESPN says he has a QBR under 33. And partially, they played Cincinnati last week, so they played a pretty tough opponent. What are going to be the keys in terms of not letting this guy? We know Memphis had his struggle against the pass. What are some things they're going to have to do to not let this freshman quarterback end up getting, confidence that he hasn't had so far?
Well, I think anytime you're going up against a freshman quarterback, you want to get pressure on him. You want to make him feel uncomfortable back there in the pocket, because that's how you can force him to go into some mistakes and maybe, rush a throw here and there. And so I think that defensive front is going to be key in making him feel rushed, because if you can do that, then maybe, Memphis can come away with some turnovers that this defense has struggled with this year. They aren't been the turnover savvy team that defense was last year. And so I think this is a good opportunity to put that freshman quarterback into some tough situations and see if he can make a few mistakes.
Mm-hmm. It seems like over the last couple of days, or maybe the last few hours, Memphis went from I think a slight underdog to now they're a slight favorite. Do you think Memphis should be a favorite entering this game? What's your opinion on that? Or do you think it's a pick 'em?
Yeah, right. It's kind of weird, right? Because I had to double check to make sure I didn't make a mistake, because one story I wrote that they were that UCF was a favorite, and then I looked again and it was Memphis, and I'm like, wait, did I make a mistake? So that is kind of interesting, and I personally would put UCF at about the one. If you're going to give the nod to the I think it was the 1.5 point favorite, I think you should give it to UCF, just because Memphis has not. I know they beat Navy last week, but they just haven't looked like the team that they were to start the year. They just haven't played well enough, and you're going on the road to the bounce house. I think I would give the nod to UCF over Memphis, but I think Memphis being the favorite is partly because UCF doesn't have Dylan Gabriel and all that, and I get that. Mm-hmm. But if I had to give the benefit of the doubt to one team or the other, I'm going to give it to the home team in that atmosphere.
Yeah. Something's going to have to give. UCF right now, they're 3-0 at home. Memphis is yet to cover on the road, let alone win. So something's going to have to give. So it's going to be a great game. I think should be prime time. Should be probably the number one athletic Vic on the night. I know NBA's back, but hey, college football on the weekday, it's always wacky. So I'm expecting some fireworks. But on the basketball front, we got Bonzi Wells, Penny Hardaway, now Lionel Hollins, Rasheed Wallace. Everybody's kind of making their debut for the 2021 season on Sunday as Memphis opens up against LeMoyne-Owen for an exhibition. So it'll be the first game-like atmosphere, I think, for a lot of the players. So I'm really interested to see some of the rotations, some of the lineups, and just to see how both teams look.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you for an exhibition matchup like this, what do you expect? Obviously, the effort is going to be like the effort's going to be there. But in terms of minutes, do you expect to see what the typical minutes for each individual player would be in a regular season? Or do you expect Penny to kind of substitute heavy to see what works as chemistry-wise?
Well, I would think if Memphis, does what it's supposed to and jumps out to a pretty big bleed, I think this will be something where you try to get in as many guys as possible and you try different lineup combinations, because I think when you're factoring that rotation, and Penny says, like, hey, I want the rotation to be 9 or 10 guys. And as you know, in those high stakes games, it'll probably be 8 or 9. So I think this would be kind of a big evaluation point for them to kind of see, can you take what you did in practice and apply it against an actual opponent? And I don't know what they're going to get from LeMoyne. LeMoyne didn't play last season. Obviously, the Tigers should roll. But I'm expecting – I think it's going to be an opportunity where I think Penny wants to get as many guys on the court as possible, even the walk-on. So I wouldn't expect to see the minutes distribution that we'll probably see during the regular season. But I do think we'll kind of learn a little bit more about where he's leaning to, which 5 is he leaning to right now, kind of starting off.
And this is obviously the first time we'll get to see this coaching staff on the bench coaching together in this fashion. Are you curious to see, what that dynamic on the bench is going to be, how that's going to play out in terms of the roles and the timeouts and the half times and all that, are you curious to kind of see how this coaching staff meshes on the bench?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because it seems like so far that everybody kind of has their defined roles, I think. You know, Larry Brown is kind of that guru, the sage with all the wisdom that comes from his Hall of Fame coaching career. You know, they say Rasheed Wallace is all about energy, and I think he's kind of like the players coach. And Cody Topper is kind of like the whiz kid on the staff. So I think everybody has their roles, and that's just in practice. So I think it's just as important as it is for the team to kind of develop that chemistry. The coaches need to do the same as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they interact. I'm not expecting a lot of adversity, so I don't think there'll be any, you know, confrontations or anything like that. But how they mesh, especially when things aren't going well, will be, I think, another key thing to watch during the season. So we'll get our first glimpse on Sunday for sure.
I know the AP preseason poll came out. Memphis was ranked number 12. What do you think about where they were voted in the preseason poll?
Well, I think, you know, a couple fans were, you know, kind of, I think, a little upset. They thought Memphis probably should have been top 10, top 5. And just in terms of pure talent, I can understand that. But look, that's the highest AP preseason ranking the school has had in a decade, literally. So I didn't see it as that big of a snub. And look, the reality is that, and it's voted on by some media members, and some media members are, you know, higher, some are lower. Some didn't have Memphis on the poll, which I think just, you know, I think that was kind of foolish in of itself. That's the biggest snub, that there were a couple of people that I don't think had Memphis on the ballot. But look, you start the season off basically as a top 10 team or right on the cusp of it. If you do what you're supposed to, you beat those teams, you're going to go into Brooklyn as a top 10, maybe a top 5 team. So I think all that stuff will sort itself out. I think between the AAC poll being picked to finish second and now this, I do think Penny Hardaway has kind of gained even more motivational tools for his team to kind of tell him, man, like, hey, we got all the talent in the world, but we still got our doubters. We still got people that think that we won't live up to those expectations. So I think for Penny Hardaway, he was probably happy with the ranking because it's easier to be the hunted as opposed to the hunter. But I didn't see it as that big of a snub, man.
Yeah, and honestly, I think number 12 is a solid ranking for Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you've got some young guys on the roster. You don't necessarily want them to go into preseason being ranked number 6 or 7 or 8 or anything like that. I think number 12 is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, you know, anybody who didn't have Memphis on the ballot at all should probably reevaluate, you know, what that was about, because obviously there's no question that they're a top 25 team. But I think number 12 is pretty fair. And like you said, you win a couple of games and the rankings will take care of themselves. And, you know, this coaching staff doesn't seem like they're overly impacted by something like that one way or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Larry was doing it at SMU, and these guys are kind of experienced with the program and things like that. I think everybody on the Memphis coaching staff right now is really focused on where the team is going to be in March. You know what I mean? Like, sure, would Penny want the team to start off top 10, top 5? Absolutely. But I think for him, he understands that the biggest thing for him is where they finish in that AP poll. I think it might have been a decade since they finished ranked, honestly, as well, too. So that would be a big achievement. So, like I said, for the Tigers, man, all the preseason noise, you know, there's going to be some doubts. So for them, the only thing you can focus on is what you can control, and that's winning these games on the court. And the best thing, if you want to show the nation that you're a top 10 team, top 5 team, then you're going to start this early stretch off at home, and you're going to beat all these teams that may be solid, like your St. Louis and Western Kentucky. Those are solid. They're going to be good teams. But if you're a top 10 team at home, you should kind of roll through those games. And like I said, the other stuff will work itself out.
Yeah. But, you know, got some good things going on this weekend with football and basketball. So we'll see how both of these games go.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank y'all once again for joining us. Check back in with us next week. We got another jam-packed week, another big game for Memphis, and I think the last exhibition game for the Memphis basketball team. So once again, this is the Daily Memphis Tigers podcast. I'm Steven Johnson, and this is my guy, Frank Bonner. We'll see you all next week.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community. The Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.